into the air, their roots do not grow that deep into the ground. The roots of redwood trees typically only grow between 5 and 6 feet below the surface, which is amazingly shallow for a root system to hold a tree that heavy. And we know that California gets some amazing weather. That winds blow in California in ways that we don't experience it here. That they get storms that we often do not experience here. Even wildfires rage in California in ways that we do not experience it. And yet with all of the devastation that nature and sometimes the devastation that humanity brings upon these forests, these trees manage to survive and do so with relatively shallow roots. The secret to the redwood trees, my brothers and sisters, is that even though the roots are relatively shallow in the ground, they grow together. That is, my brothers and sisters, to say that a redwood tree does not grow nor can it survive in isolation. That they are not made to exist by themselves. If you were to try to plant a redwood tree here on these beautiful grounds, it would not be long before that tree would wither up and die, because redwood trees are not designed to grow alone, but they are designed to grow together in a community of redwood trees. Their roots are designed, my brothers and sisters, and I believe designed by God in such a way that when they grow together, and so that it is hard to distinguish the roots of one tree from the roots of another tree. When they grow beneath the surface, they are intertwined with one another so that the roots spread along this very, very shallow trajectory, but they hold together, my brothers and sisters, so that if one redwood begins to lean and the winds begin to blow one redwood, it cannot uproot it from the ground because it is tied, connected to the other redwoods. My brothers and sisters, that way of the roots growing together not only ensure that the redwoods have safety against the storms, that they're able to withstand whatever storms may arise in their presence, my brothers and sisters, but it also helps them to be able to find food and strength and nourishment together. Because if the roots from one tree finds its way to water or finds its way to mineral-rich soil, because the roots are intertwined, that the message is automatically being sent to the network of trees that it is connected to. So all of the roots know where to go to find water or find the nutrient-rich soil. So that one tree will not prosper by itself. One tree does not keep all of the resources to itself, but they share with the other trees so that all the trees can benefit from the nutrients that are there together. My brothers and sisters, the redwoods survive because they are in this thing together. And I believe, my brothers and sisters, that one of the reasons perhaps that God designed the redwood trees in such a way is to teach us a lesson, to inform us, to remind us through a simple observation of nature, my brothers and sisters, that like redwood trees, you were not designed to live in isolation. You were not designed to live by yourself. You were not designed to go through this life thing alone, my brothers and sisters. But God has designed us to live in community. When at the beginning of creation, God looks at this first creature that God has created, this first mud creature that God has fashioned God's self from the dirt of the ground and has breathed the breath of life into this creature. This one creature, my brothers and sisters, after God had looked at everything that God created and stated that it was good, God looks at this creature and says, it is not good for this creature to be alone, so let me create a partner for this creature so this creature can have community, my brothers and sisters. And what was true for the first human being ever created is true for each and every one of us. God has designed us to live in community. My brothers and sisters, I believe it is so deep that God, even in God's revelation of God's self does not reveal God's self to us in a singular form, but God reveals God's self to us in Trinitarian form, because God wants us to know that even God exists in community, my brothers and sisters. That's why we talk about God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Ghost, my brothers and sisters, because even God exists in community with God's self. And if God exists in community, what makes you think that you can go through this life thing alone? God has designed us, created us for, calls us into community, my brothers and sisters, which is why every Sunday morning when my eyes open and my feet hit the floor, I'm so glad that I am coming here to worship God with you, my brothers and sisters, so that I can remember that no matter what has happened Monday through Saturday, no matter how I feel about Monday through Saturday, I know that I'm not by myself, but I can look in your eyes, and I can look in your eyes, and I can look in your eyes and know that we are in this together. I know that I can come here and I can get a hug and I can get a handshake, and somebody will say, it's so good to see you, so that I know that here I am not by myself, but God has called me into community. And that's why, my brothers and sisters, even when we feel like isolating ourselves, even when we feel like staying home and being alone, it's good to get up and press our way to worship so that we can remind ourselves that you are not in this alone, that we are in this thing together. Won't you help me preach this, my brothers and sisters? Won't you turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor, we're in this thing together. Now, I'm looking at your neighbor, and I'm not sure your neighbor believes it the way you said it, my brothers and sisters. So won't you get your best third Sunday in the month of September voice on, clear your throat, look at your neighbor in the eye like you believe what you're about to say, and say with conviction, neighbor, we're in this thing together. I want you to know, my brothers and sisters, that God has not left you alone. God has not left you by yourself, but God has called you into community. God has called you to be with people, to remind you, my brothers and sisters, that whenever you feel like you are all alone or by yourself, that God still has you. God is with you. And if you can't feel God's presence, just come to the church and somebody will remind you that God is there with you. We're in this thing together. And it's important, my brothers and sisters, it's important that we remember and that we come into community because we are learning more and more about the dangers of isolation. We are learning, my brothers and sisters, that isolation doesn't just take a toll on the mind. And it doesn't just take a toll on the emotions, my brothers and sisters, but isolation also takes a toll on the body. There are studies that keep coming out, medical journal after medical journal keeps reporting studies that indicate that isolation can have serious physical health issues. It is believed, my brothers and sisters, that isolation and loneliness can have the same health impacts as high blood pressure, obesity, and smoking. And in other words, my brothers and sisters, you can be in every other way healthy, but if you live in isolation, that isolation will take a toll on your body the same way that eating unhealthy or having unhealthy habits like smoking would have on your body, my brothers and sisters. Isolation is physically, mentally, and spiritually taxing and dangerous, my brothers and sisters, which is why we know that as human beings, we are social creatures. Our biology and psychology are designed for us to thrive in collaborative networks of people, my brothers and sisters. And yet, in spite of this, there are so many people in our communities who live in isolation. There are people all over our communities, my brothers and sisters, who may not live in physical isolation. They may have people around them who live next door who live across the street, sometimes who even live in the same building, sometimes who even live in the same house or same apartment, my brothers and sisters. But even though they are living in proximity to people, that does not mean they are not isolated from people. Proximity does not mean community, my brothers and sisters, but there are a lot of people who live in close physical proximity to people, but who are socially and emotionally isolated. And so I believe one of the tasks, one of the ways that God calls us as a church is to find ways to show up for people who live in isolation. One of the things that God calls us to do, my brothers and sisters, is not to take this valuable gift that we call community, this gift that is both spiritually rich and physically rich, this gift that God has given us, my brothers and sisters, that speaks words of life to us each and every day, where we can share words of life with each other each and every day. This network of people that we have established, where we pray for one another week in and week out, where we show up with and for one another in our biggest and our most challenging moments, my brothers and sisters, that God has called us not to come together and talk about how great it is that we have this community here in this safe place, but God has called us to take this gift that God has given us and that we give one another, and to take it outside of these walls to show up for people, my brothers and sisters, who are experiencing isolation. And so it is in this story, the story of David, that I want to take a look at. What does it mean to show up for people, my brothers and sisters? Well, David, as you may remember, at this time is not yet king. David is little more than a glorified shepherd, my brothers and sisters. And while we talk about shepherds in amazing ways, especially because of that 23rd Psalm that starts out, "The Lord is my shepherd," people were not talking about shepherds in great ways in this time. Shepherds were considered one of the lowliest of professions. It was the job that people did when they could not do other jobs. The reason you know it is because David comes from a family full of brothers. He is the youngest of a series of brothers, and all the other brothers took all the other jobs and left being a shepherd to David. If being a shepherd was a job that anybody would have wanted, the other brothers would have taken it, my brothers and sisters. But they went off to do the things that would be celebrated. They went off to do the things that would get them recognition. In fact, David is so forgotten that when the prophet Samuel comes to anoint the next king, and they bring all the brothers together for Samuel to look at, they forget David out in the field with his sheep. Nobody even calls David in to meet the prophet, my brothers and sisters. That's how little David was looked at in his own family, my brothers and sisters. That's why he was given the job of shepherd. And so here is this person who is considered the least important person in his family, given the least important job in the community, my brothers and sisters. But his father calls him to run an errand for him, and his father sends him to the battle lines to check on your brothers. His father calls him and he says, "David, I need to hear that my other sons are doing okay at the battle. So here, take this bread for your brothers. And here, take some cheese for their captain, so he'll let you talk to them. And then go down and see that your brothers are all right. And then bring me back something from them so I can know that they are still alive." And so David goes down on this task, my brothers and sisters, goes down to the battlefield to see what is happening and to speak to his brothers. And right there, even in that, our brothers and sisters, is one secret of how we can show up, and that is to remember who has sent us. Despite what the brothers say about David later in the text, my brothers and sisters, David does not send himself to the battle. David does not go to the battle on his own, but it is his father who sends him to the battle. He is there on an assignment from his father to go and see what is happening so that he can give a report about what's happening, my brothers and sisters. I simply say that to say, just in case you are confused about it, I want to help unconfuse you, my brothers and sisters. You are not here by accident or coincidence. You did not just happen to stumble upon Beloved Community Church, my brothers and sisters, but God has called you here, whether this is your first Sunday here or you've been with us since the beginning. God has called you here for a purpose. Every time you set foot inside these doors, God has a word for you, my brothers and sisters, and not just for you to keep, but for you to take and go share with somebody. You are here on an assignment, my brothers and sisters. In fact, can I extend this a little further and say not only are you not here in this place by accident, but you are not here in this life by accident. It's not just by accident you are born, my brothers and sisters. It's not just coincidence that you are here, but even if your father and your mother did not plan for your arrival, I want you to know that heaven and history have been planning for you, my brothers and sisters, that God has been waiting on you to arrive, that God knew you were coming, and you are not here by accident, but God has a purpose for you being here. My brothers and sisters, at times when you don't know why it is that you need to show up, at times when you feel like it may not be important for you to show up, I want you to remember that you're not here by accident, but God has a purpose for you. You are here on a divine assignment, my brothers and sisters. God has something for you to do. Won't you turn to your neighbor and say, God has purpose for you. I want you to remember who sent you to show up, my brothers and sisters. God called you out of the heavens from beyond the stars. God called you by name. God called you from your father and your mother. Don't you know that DNA tells us that if any other combination had impregnated your mother, that another person would have been born. But it took that specific combination of DNA to come together to make you. In other words, my brothers and sisters, millions of other people could have been born when you were born, but you were the one who was born because God needed you to be born at that time, because God has work for you to do in the world. Never forget, my brothers and sisters, that you have importance. You matter. It is important that you are here. It is essential that you are here because God has something for you to do. My brothers and sisters, we show up because God is the one who sends us to show up. God is the one who calls us to show up. Like Isaiah in the passage we read for our devotional scripture this morning, when God calls and said, "Who shall I send and who will go for us?" Isaiah said, "Here am I, send me." And we need some people within Isaiah's spirit, my brothers and sisters. We need people who will say, "Here am I, send me." God, whatever you need me to do, I will do. Where you need me to go, I will go. Who you need me to talk to, I will talk to. Who you need me to pray for, I will pray for. Send me, I'll go. Remember the one who sent you, my brothers and sisters. The second thing that we see in this text, not only that we are called to remember who sent us to show up, but that showing up requires that we pay attention to what is happening when we get there. David could have shown up and done his job and went home and never paid attention to anything that was happening around him. David could have gone, he could have given the cheese to the commanders, given the bread to his brothers, asked how his brothers were doing, gotten a token from them, and went home and ignored everything that was happening on the battlefield, my brothers and sisters. But even though David thought he knew what his purpose was, God had a bigger purpose for him being there. And David did not understand that purpose until David paid attention to what was happening. The Bible says that as David is there and he's speaking to his brothers, as they are lining up, getting ready for this daily drill, this daily exercise, where the army of Israel was on one side and the army of the Philistines were on the other, and they were looking across the gulf at one another, that at this moment, as David is talking to his brothers, here comes Goliath showing up. The giant steps up, my brothers and sisters, and challenges the armies, challenges them, and says, "We don't need everybody to fight. Just send your your best fighter out here to fight against me. If there's anyone among you who has any courage, if there's anyone among you that has any strength, if there's anyone among you big enough, bad enough, or brave enough to come out and fight me, let that one person fight me, and we will see who is the best fighter, and we will see whose God is really God. Let's fight one-on-one. And everybody on the Israel's camp cowered in the presence of Goliath because they were afraid. But David was paying attention. David paid attention to the giant, not just to the giant's presence, but to the giant's proclamation. David paid attention to what the giant was saying, my brothers and sisters. And showing up requires that we pay attention to what's happening around us where we show up. I want you to know, my brothers and sisters, that the people that you encounter in their daily lives are daily being beset and besieged by giants. That there are giants that they are facing, giants that are challenging them, giants that are calling them out. They are fighting giants in their daily life, my brothers and sisters. And if you don't pay attention to what's happening to them or around them, you can easily interact with them and miss their giants. And then you wonder why people are acting the way they do. You wonder why people show up in the way they do. You wonder why people are struggling with what they're struggling with. It's because they are facing giants, my brothers and sisters. And if you don't pay attention to the giants that people are dealing with, you'll never know how to engage with them well. My brothers and sisters, that you can't really understand someone unless you have somewhat of an understanding of the giants they are facing, my brothers and sisters. I would argue you really can't even do ministry with someone unless you understand the giants that they are facing, my brothers and sisters. And so it requires that we show up with more than just a scripture to give somebody, but we show up and pay attention to what is happening in people's lives. My brothers and sisters, the reason that many people do not come to church is because we stopped paying attention. We stopped listening to what was happening. We stopped caring about what was going on in their lives. And the sermons that were coming from the pulpit were not applicable to people's lives, my brothers and sisters. And so they stopped listening because we weren't saying anything that was helping them. And so if we are going to have a relevant ministry, my brothers and sisters, we've got to have space where we listen to what people are wrestling with, where we listen to what people are going through, where we do not just show up, my brothers and sisters, but we show up and pay attention. Turn to your neighbor and say, you got to pay attention. You got to pay attention to the people, my brothers and sisters. Our artists remind us of the importance of paying attention. It is why Marvin Gaye is one of the most beloved artists, my brothers and sisters. It is because of songs like What's Going On. Songs like Mercy, Mercy Me. Songs where he is talking about what is happening around. He is paying attention to what is happening and putting it in his lyrics, my brothers and sisters. It's why that hip-hop is built on the work of artists like Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. Because they pay attention to what is going on. And so the lyrics and their songs, my brothers and sisters, are in touch with what's happening in the communities around them. It is why these artists are so beloved, because they pay attention to what's happening. Which is why, my brothers and sisters, if these artists can pay attention to what's happening and their music can be a reflection of what they are seeing in their communities around them, my brothers and sisters, how much more important is it for you and I to pay attention to what's happening? Because people need to know, my brothers and sisters, it's not just people trying to sell a record who are listening to what's happening, but it is the people that God has called to do a divine work of ministry who's paying attention to what's happening, my brothers and sisters. They need to know that there is somebody on assignment from God who loves them enough to listen to them and pay attention to what is happening in their world, so that when we speak, we are not speaking without knowledge of what's going on in them, but we speak because we've paid attention to the giants that they are facing in their life.
David shows up, my brothers and sisters, remembering who sent him and paying attention to the needs, to what is happening around him. The last thing I want to say about the importance of showing up, my brothers and sisters, is don't be discouraged when you show up. If the people who you show up for say negative things about you. Don't be discouraged, my brothers and sisters, when you show up if they talk bad about you. If I can share with you a story, it was about 5 years ago, my brothers and sisters, when I was organizing in the streets of Ferguson. The time when I went, and I thought I was going there for a couple of days, and I ended up there for 4 months. My brothers and sisters. And while I was there, in the midst of all that was happening, in the midst of the tear gas, in the midst of people being arrested for participating in their civil liberties and exercising their constitutionally given rights, my brothers and sisters. I was there in the midst of all of this. I remember one day I had a meeting with church folk during the day, so I wore my church suit. I was wearing a blue suit, my brothers and sisters, so that when I walked in the church, people would recognize me as somebody who belonged in church. I wanted the preachers who might have forgotten who I was because I'd been gone for so long, I wanted them to be able to recognize me as someone who belonged in the circle. So I wore a suit to let them know that I belonged in that space among this gathering of clergy. And after wrestling and arguing with the clergy seemingly as long as Jacob wrestled with the angel, my brothers and sisters, I left the church and went out to the streets. And I didn't go home and change, but I left and I wore the same blue suit that I wore to the church meeting out into the streets. And I was trying to talk with people about what was happening and about their realities. I was trying to let them know that I was listening and paying attention to them, and I understood the realities that they were experiencing. I was trying to let them know that even though they had not seen me in the streets recently, that I used to live in this community. I used to work in this community. I spent 14 years in this community. My family lives right up the street and are still in this community. I was trying to let them know that I was not coming as an outsider trying to tell them what to do, that I was coming as an insider trying to help them figure out what God was calling them to do in the midst of all the pain and the chaos that was going on. And I remember this brother walks up to me in the midst of me trying to have a conversation, and he said, "Hey, you with the shiny suit, what are you doing in our neighborhood? You don't belong here, bruh. Take your shiny suit-having self." He didn't say self. He said another word that I'm not going to say because I'm preaching today. "Take your shiny suit-having self up out of here because this ain't your neighborhood." Wow. And I said to him, I said, "Bro, what's your name?" "It doesn't matter what my name is, bro. You don't belong here." I said, "Look, man, I understand what you're going through. I understand the pain that you're experiencing. I understand that a lot of people who look like me, who dress like me, have only shown up here when they want something from you, have only shown up here when they're trying to tell you what to do. But I'm here to tell you that I'm not here because I want anything from you, and I'm not here because I'm trying to tell you what to do. I'm here because I love you. And even though we haven't met, I want you to know that I love you because I serve a God who loved you first. And so I'm here, and you can tell me to leave, but I ain't going nowhere. And I'll be back here tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that. And they can't tear gas me out of here. They can't arrest me out of here. They can't run me out of here. And you can't talk bad about me enough to make me leave out of here because God has sent me with an assignment, and I'm here to make sure that assignment gets carried out." Brothers and sisters, I tell that story to say that I know in the movies when people show up to do good work, all of the people that they show up for are so glad they're there. And they join hands and they sing songs and they throw parades and they have confetti and they celebrate the fact that people have finally shown up to see their pain and care about them. But I want you to know, my brothers and sisters, it doesn't happen like that in real life. And you may show up and people may not ever let you know that they're glad you're there. In fact, they may not even be glad you're there, my brothers and sisters. They may talk about you instead of sing praises for you. They may throw stuff at you instead of throwing confetti for you. They may try to get you to leave instead of throwing a parade in your honor, my brothers and sisters. But no matter what they say about you, keep talking good about you. Even if they aren't happy that you showed up, my brothers and sisters, keep showing up because God will say, well done. My brothers and sisters, we can keep showing up because we serve a God who keeps showing up. I know God keeps showing up, my brothers and sisters, because every time I open the Bible, I see another example of how God has shown up. God showed up for Abraham in the form of an angel who had breakfast with him. God showed up for Moses in the form of a burning bush. God showed up for Gideon in the form of dew on a fleece. God showed up for Joshua, my brothers and sisters, in the form of a horn, so that when they walked around the walls came tumbling down. God showed up for Samson as strength when he was at his weakest point. God showed up for Daniel as a muzzle for the lion's mouth when he was in the lion's den. God showed up for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego as an air condition and a companion in the fiery furnace, my brothers and sisters. But I'm so glad when people could not see God the way God kept showing up. God said, let me step out of heaven down into earth myself and let me show up in human form. And then God showed up in the person of Jesus, my brothers and sisters. God showed up being conceived by a teenage mother. God showed up born in a manger. God showed up outcast, my brothers and sisters, walking with the people who were left out of the temple. God showed up with wine for a wedding when the wine ran out. God showed up with fish sandwiches for people who were hungry in the wilderness. God showed up with healing for a blind man. God showed up with new legs for a man who couldn't walk. God showed up with resurrection power for Lazarus when he was dead, my brothers and sisters. And then they crucified Jesus because he kept showing up. They got tired of Jesus showing up with all these people that they said were unimportant. They got tired of Jesus showing up with all these people that they said didn't count. So they crucified Jesus. They hung him on a cross. They talked bad about him, my brothers and sisters, after they beat him all night long. But Jesus didn't even let that stop him from showing up, because the Bible says that early Sunday morning, just about the break of day, Jesus showed up one more time with resurrection power, with power so that you can show up, power so that we can show up, power. He showed up, my brothers and sisters, so that you and I can show up. And I want to know today, before I take my seat, I want to know, is there somebody here who's willing to say, God, because you showed up for me, I'm going to show up for somebody else. Don't fool me now, but if you're willing to show up, won't you put your hands together and give God praise? If you're willing to show up, won't you stand on your feet and say hallelujah? If you're willing to show up, won't you say, God, I'll show up?
Oh, hallelujah. Thank you, God. Bless your name, Jesus. Glory to God.
Because you showed up for me,
Hallelujah.
I will show up for somebody else.
Amen.
We have a practice here, beloved, that we call response to the word. And it's simply our way of acknowledging that God does not just seek to talk through me because I'm the one up here with the microphone, but that God desires to talk through to and through each and every one of us. And so we take a moment and say, God, what is it that you are saying to me right now? What is it that you have